Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. Finally.
The Hitting the Turnbuckle Podcast.
Who's come back? Give me a hell yeah.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Hitting the Turnbuckle Podcast. I, as always, am your host, Andy Burrows. I am joined by my good friend and tag team partner, Mr. Adam Cousins. Adam, what's up, brother? You good?
I'm very good and very excited today.
You are indeed. I mean, we had the For Love of Wrestling guys on the other day, and they attract some of the biggest wrestling superstars in the world. Adam, why don't you tell our listeners how we've attracted one of the biggest names in the world of wrestling to our podcast today, my friend?
I'll try and do the guy justice, and apologies if I don't. So this guest in particular revolutionized wrestling as we know it. To paint the picture to some of the older fans and younger guys, you need to cast your minds back to probably 1996 time. At that time, wrestling was at war. Well, two companies was at war. There was the WWF/E, run by Vince McMahon, and there was a WCW, which was run by Eric Bischoff, but backed by a billionaire owner, Ted Turner. And at that stage, WCW not only taken some of the WWF's biggest stars, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Piper, Hall, Nash, but it was also beating them in the most important war on wrestling, the television ratings war, until this man injected some attitude into the WWE. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hitting the Turnbuckle Podcast, the one, the only Mr. Vince Russo. Welcome.
Wow, Adam, that was a great intro, man. You had me sitting at the edge of my seat, wondering where this was gonna go. Thanks a lot, bro. I really appreciate it, man.
Vince, we are truly honored to have you on our show, man. I first come across you back in the WWF magazine days, where you were like one of the main writer, and then you moved that on to TV. I mean, Vince, before we get into the whole Attitude Era and stuff like that, we're gonna get into that over the next hour. I just want to get your thoughts. I mean, I listen to your podcasts and your YouTube shows. How would you sum up today's wrestling? Because it must be weird for you to go from an era where it was like there was obviously no cell phones, the internet wasn't as it is now. I mean, me and Adam say all the time, I had to go on WWF.com just to see who had won the main event on Raw. I mean, how do you sum up what you're seeing in the modern day wrestling?
Oh, if I had to sum it up, I would sum it up in two words, Andy. It sucks. I am not a fan of today's wrestling. They would have lost me completely if it wasn't for the fact that, I actually get paid to watch Raw. I don't watch any other show. And if, the company I do reviews with, if they ever stopped paying me to watch Raw, I would not be watching any wrestling at all.
Wow. Do you think a lot of people have been on the hype chain right now, since Hunter's come in, since Triple H has kind of taken over the reins, it's got a little bit better. I'm kind of seeing a little bit of an upturn, but nothing like we get this all the time because myself and Adam, we're old school. We were lucky. We grew up in an era when wrestling was wrestling. It was great. You had to tune in Monday, and then you had to tune in again Friday to know what the storylines has continued. Now I'm jumping all over the place. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Raw, SmackDown, SmackDown people are allowed on Raw. I mean, how do you feel that it's moved on now that Vince McMahon's kind of taken a back seat?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. It certainly hasn't improved enough for me to want to watch it. I still have no interest in watching it. I mean, I watch Raw every single Monday because, like I said, I get paid to and it's part of my job. But since Triple H took over, I don't want to watch any more WWE product than that. So, like, if you're asking me honestly, has it impacted me to the point of me wanting more? Absolutely not. I'm seeing a lot of the same old. They've been on a little bit of a run the last 3 weeks because, they had Raw 30 and then it was the first Raw after Royal Rumble. Now we're going into WrestleMania season. So they do have a little bit of momentum, but I'm just telling you as somebody they lost, I don't have any desire to get back since Triple H has taken over.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, you get a lot of casual fans watching wrestling right now. This is the lead up to WrestleMania. I mean, Adam, how are you seeing it? Are you kind of like, are you with Vince? Obviously Russo, not McMahon. How like since Triple H has taken over?
Yeah, I mean, I think Vince has hit the nail on the head. It's improved slightly, but you know, the reality is it's never going to get back to those times that we watched it. The world that we lived in's changed. Like, could you honestly see like a heel Sergeant Slaughter character now being allowed on the TV with these snowflakes and Karens that they've got in the world? It wouldn't happen, you know. But I prefer SmackDown to Raw. I don't like the 3 hours. It doesn't interest me enough. Like back when we watched it, if it was 3 hours, it would, because you're not necessarily tuned in for action. You're tuned, what's Austin going to do? What's McMahon going to do? Who's The Rock going to be right on the mic? What are DX going to come out and dress up as this week? It wasn't always about the in-ring action. It was the storylines going around it that made it interesting for me. That's why for the last sort of year or so, I've been a fan more of SmackDown, because of the Roman Reigns bloodline story was been the only thing that's really watchable over the last year.
Yeah, definitely. Vince, do you think that the title has kind of lost something now? Like you say, when you were back working and writing for Raw, I knew that the start of the show, it was the essence of the show was going to be surrounding the World Heavyweight title. I mean, we've now got a champion that's, you know, had both belts for God knows how long now. I mean, back then it was like you knew that Stone Cold was going to open Raw. You knew that The Rock was going to open the Raw. The whole show, from you had the start, and you knew at the end it was going to be involving a world title. Now, you know, you see sometimes the US title. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting down these titles, but it seems to have lost something where wrestling used to be evolving around the champion, and now it's not that Roman Reigns is part-time, but they just don't seem to evolve, want to use it as much anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I still do a little work, like you know, on the indie level, you know, because it's local and you know, it's fun. And the shows I wrote, the shows I continue to write, everything revolves around the title. I mean, that's why you're there. That's what every wrestler longs to be. The fact that Roman holds 2 titles, I don't have a problem with that, but if I'm writing the show, then he's on every Raw and he's on every SmackDown, and every Raw and SmackDown is going to revolve around that title and who's going after it. So I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, definitely. Vince, let's talk a little bit about the Attitude Era now. For our listeners that don't know how you went from writing for the magazine to writing some of the best TV that I know I've watched and I know Adam's watched. How did that come about? You know what I mean? Because obviously it's gone from magazine to TV. Was it a shock for you when they first said, "Hey, Vince, we want you to come on board as one of our lead writers now. We want you to really drive this forward now, moving into what was known as the Attitude Era"?
Yeah, it really did, because you know, I was so content with being the editor of the magazine. I mean, I got a degree in journalism. I am a writer. So I was very content with that. I had no ambitions whatsoever of TV writing. I mean, I really didn't. But what happened was the product at that time started getting so bad. And I was very vocal about it. As a matter of fact, I thought the TV product was so bad, I started making up my own angles in the magazine, because what I hated what I was watching on television, much like now. And you know, I became very, very, very outspoken. The WWE were losing viewers, they were losing money. Vince McMahon had the same people around him that he had around him for years and years and years. I really don't think Vince knew what to do. So, you know, here I was with a totally different view. I was more of a fan than I was somebody, you know, who had been in the business in 20 years. So I was a television viewer. I think I knew what the masses wanted. So, you know, he rolled the dice with me, but I really believe that at that point, he had nothing to lose, to be honest with you.
Adam, when did you first notice, you're like, hang on a minute, This is getting good. Something must have changed, and that change was our beloved guest today, Mr. Russo.
Yeah, I mean, you look at wrestling and how it was. I mean, it was like I would say like a magazine, not like the WWE magazine or WWF magazine, but it was like comic book. You know, you had Hogan, you had the villains like Hogan, Yoko, Earthquake, even back when we were, but then you kind of saw this, and I think it sort of changed along with society. Like, how many times did you want to go in and smack your boss and drink a load of beer over him while you put him to the floor?
I wanted to do that today.
Yeah. The bottom line is when it changed with society and you can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like Austin was my guy, because obviously look at the hair, but it was everything that society wanted to do, you've done. And that was the captivating bit. And even going back a bit later on, like when you found out the Undertaker had a brother, you were like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden the incarnation of Kane, which Pyro still is the most scariest thing to hear live. I will tell you that.
Yeah,
in the entranceway. But yeah, I think it was because it became more relatable rather than heroes and villains. You were kind of like, hang on, this guy's meant to be a villain, but I love this guy.
And you know what? It should be the same exact thing today. Adam, you hit the nail on the head. My plan was they were back in the 70s and it was the mid 90s. And what I basically said was, we have to mirror society. They're at the same exact place today. If they mirrored society and made this show relatable to the general public, your ratings would double. But they tend to go back to what they know, and what they know is wrestling. So with that, you're shut out to the real world. You're not dealing with the issues of the real world. You're not dealing with the issues of real people, and you become a fictitious wrestling product. And if you're not a fan of wrestling, you're just not going to watch it. So it really is not hard to mirror society, and I really believe that's the key.
Vince, what was it like? How did you sit down about changing wrestling? Like, you know what I mean? WCW were kicking WWF's ass back then. You know, a lot of the big quote unquote 80s and early 90s guys have gone over to WCW. You've got your Hogans, you've got your Savage, Luger's turning up on Nitro, etc., etc. What was your main thinking when you first sat down with a blank piece of paper and said, right, let's go and change professional wrestling?
The main thinking was and I these were my exact words to Vince McMahon. You need to take the wrestling handbook and throw it out the window. Because wrestling, it's the same today. Like, if you guys are still watching Raw, the last 2 weeks, the beginning of Raw, they announced the Elimination Chamber qualifying matches.
Yeah.
The minute they announced them, I know who's winning every match. There's no reason for me to watch the show at all. I know who's going over in every match. That's what wrestling does. They get in patterns and they get in routines, and you know exactly what's going to happen. And one of the first things I said to Vince is, we need to take that wrestling handbook, throw it away. Where you went left, we're going to go right, and we are going to do it 100% of the time. Nobody is going to be able to predict this show. There are going to be swerves. There are going to be curves. And that is going to turn it into must-see TV. What are they going to do next? Again, man, fast forward to 2023, we've slipped right into those same patterns. You guys even talk about, the bloodline that gets, all the accolades. First of all, it's getting all the accolades for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the only storyline. That's number one. Number two, the bar has been so lowered. So if you get anything, it's War and Peace. It's the greatest thing you've ever saw. Number three, at the end of the day, how predictable was the story? Like, of course, that's where it was going to go. I could have told you that, 3 to 6 months ago. So that was really the difference in the Attitude Era, that there wasn't a set pattern and a routine where this is what we were going to do every single time. And like I said, 2023, they're right back to the same place.
Definitely. What was the reaction from the boys in the back when you said, hey, we're doing this? Because like Adam said earlier, the Attitude Era, there was some of the craziest things, Stone Cold was getting chucked off a bridge. There was people, that you couldn't have got away with half the stuff now in this woke 2020, 23. You had the likes of Sable, you had all these people on Monday Night Raw. What was the reaction?
But see, I got to be honest with you, Andy, because here's the bottom line. You could and you would get away with it in 2023. The only reason you would not do that is because you would back down from the pressure. If you went ahead and did that, what would happen? Yeah. I mean, you just bring up Sable. I'm still seeing sexy women on TV on 2023. I mean, put on your talk shows and see what the actresses and the musicians and the entertainers, see what the female guests are wearing on the talk shows. None of that has ever changed. There is still a lot of sexuality on television. Those shows still air. They're dropping the F-bomb on television. There's edgy storylines on television. They cover, race on television. They cover all the hot topics on TV today, but somehow, some way, all these shows seem to get away with it. But the WWE can't. The problem is, Adam, they're not, Adam and Andy, they're not capable of it, bro. That takes writing. You need writers to do that. They don't have writers. They have wrestling bookers. That's what they have. So every single week you're seeing the same wrestling show, because I'm telling you, on russosbrand.com, my podcast, I'm reviewing the Attitude Era show. There is nothing on those shows that you could not do today. Absolutely nothing. I'm telling you, women dressing sexy, Austin throwing up a middle finger. You absolutely positively could do that today. The reality is, A, you don't have the writers to do it, and B, you don't have the balls to do it. That's really what it comes down to.
Adam, do you think now as well, like Vince just touched on there, do you think it's more like they don't want to upset these TV executives, these big people sitting in the you know what I mean?
I got to interrupt you, bro. I got to interrupt you because, bro, it was a year ago. I think I stopped a year ago. So a year ago would have been 2012. From 2010 to 2012, I was consulting for the USA Network. I was consulting for them. I was in contact with them every single week. Andy, this is what they wanted. They wanted the product to go back to this. They made that clear to me. That's why they hired me as a consultant. So wherever this message is coming from, I just want to make it clear to you, it's not coming from the network.
So it's clearly coming from WWE executives, Vince McMahon, you know what I mean? It's coming from them guys who I don't know why, is it something they don't want to go back to? Is it something they're scared to do? They haven't got the talent to do it?
Listen, I got to be honest here, guys. When I was there, they weren't a publicly owned company. They were privately owned. So there weren't shareholders involved. But if I'm a shareholder of the WWE, do I want 10 million people to watch or 2 million people to watch? Like, are you freaking kidding me? If I am a shareholder, I want to make money from my shares. The company is going to make a hell of a lot more money if there's 10 million people watching opposed to 2 million. So where exactly it's coming from, I have no idea, because there are a lot of edgy shows out there that I'm watching. There are people advertising on their shows. Bro, Yellowstone.
Oh, one of my favorite
one,
programs.
One of my favorite. Bro, how many F-bombs do they drop on Yellowstone?
Yeah.
Bro, there's advertisements on Yellowstone. Bro, the storylines. What about Beth, a female getting the
Kicking us.
shit kicked out of her? There was a commercial following that. So I don't think it comes from anywhere, bro. I don't think they know how to do it.
Adam, what do you make of what Vince has said? Like you say, like we've mentioned at the start of the show, and we're interviewing the man that wrote the era that we loved. It could be coming from WWE, right? Maybe they don't. Maybe they're scared to do what they done back in the day.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Vince said makes it. They could do what they want. Yeah, they could make it an Attitude Era again. I still think there's an quality issue with writing there. Like I just said, you would watch Raw. You didn't really care if you was watching Al Snow against, Boss Man, but it was what was going on around it. And that's the compelling viewing. Like if you watch a long running series like Yellowstone, or for example, I used to watch like Law and Order and Criminal Minds and things like that. It wasn't necessarily always about the action. It's the writing that goes around that makes a story. So for me, when I was watching Raw, like I've said before, it was always about the quality of the angles and the quality of what's going on. I don't think they have that anymore. It's probably testament to our guests that we've got there, but they have a load more writers, but it's going nowhere.
Yeah, and they don't seem to know how to write wrestling either. These are just, they're not wrestling people. Vince was a wrestler. You were a wrestling person. The way I get it now is, maybe you and another writing a wrestling show. I'm envisioning now 9, 10, 11 people sitting around a table trying to write a wrestling show who haven't really got a clue about the wrestling business.
Yeah, you've got to understand wrestling, and you got to understand TV. It's funny what Adam was just saying. Listen, nobody studied the ratings more than I did. I knew the ratings inside out. I knew my audience inside out. Do you guys know, like we just talked about the last 2 weeks on Raw, we've had qualifying matches for the Elimination Chamber. This is a fact. When I was writing television and you did like a tournament, okay, every single time you did that, there was a drop in the ratings. That's a fact. And the reason, based on what Adam said, was, bro, there was a drop in the ratings because they were cold matches. There were no stories. They were cold matches, just like all these elimination chambers are cold matches. Now, if I'm writing the show, I know based on numbers and based on experience, bro, if I do 2, 3, 4 weeks of elimination chamber quality, qualifying matches, the ratings are going to be the shits. And that's exactly why they're cold wrestling matches. There is no story that is, tying that match together. And these are all things that the ratings have told you this over the last 20, 30 years. And the fact that they don't understand these things, either they don't want to know or they're too lazy to learn. But all of this is factual, man.
Just quickly on that, Vince, I think I remember you saying on an interview they've done that you used to sort of either study quarter by quarter or segment by segment ratings. I can't quite remember what it was. My question is, and it's a very interesting one, is the Austin McMahon feud, which was obviously it's still going on as of last WrestleMania. Vince got stunned pretty poorly, but it still happened. If that tanked during the Attitudes, like it was, as you say, the shits, would that have been dropped? And did you have a backup, or is it just on the fly? What's doing well? We'll get in.
Listen, I sit here. People say, "Oh, Vince Russo likes to take credit for the Attitude Era." Meanwhile, I've said to nauseam 1 billion times, it is not rocket science. It's common sense, and it's just what you said, Adam. We would get those minute-by-minute ratings. Whatever was up, we gave them more. Whatever was less, we eliminated. The ratings have to go up if you do that. They have to. If you give them more what they want and eliminate what they don't want, The ratings have to go up. Here's a perfect case in point, bro. You're watching Raw. Bro, the first day Baron Corbin came out with JBL, nobody cared. Nobody cared. And the ratings would have showed you nobody cared. And you're going to go 3 months with that until you figure out nobody cares? No, bro, that should have been nipped in the bud immediately. Replace it with something else they're going to care about. Bro, it's simple, it's logical, but they're too lazy to put the time in, man.
Yeah, Vince, just switching gears a little bit, my friend. Obviously, you ended up having some on-screen roles for some companies. Like you said to us when we were chatting to you before the show, you're an open book. How did you find the on-screen roles? Because I always felt, and I think I've heard you talk about this on podcasts, I thought WCW kind of used you as a scapegoat. They wanted someone to put the failure on. And I personally think that WCW put it on you for all the wrong reasons. They wanted to pin that to someone. This is why our company's failed. This is it. I personally thought that was complete BS. How did you find the on-screen roles, and how did you find the way that you were later treated in WCW?
I'll be honest with you, and I hated it. I hate, so many people with you put yourself on TV, you put the belt on yourself. They're such absolute imbeciles, because here's the bottom line, Andy. It's exactly what you said. Bro, when I got hired by the WCW, I brought graphs with me so they could see how long it took us to grow the WWE ratings. I brought graphs to show these guys, bro, this is a year. This is a year of good, consistent shows every single week. Increasing your ratings is not going to happen overnight. Here's how long it took. I showed them. Oh, yeah, no, Vince, we understand. We understand. Okay, we understand. We don't understand. So what happened, bro? They hire me and they expect the ratings to go up the next week. So they were putting so much pressure on me to the point where I made the mistake of saying, okay, bro, you know what? You want ratings so bad, I'll freaking go out there and do it myself. That's literally what I did. I did not enjoy it. I am a writer and a producer. I love writing and producing. And as an on-air talent, that took away from my writing and producing. So I never enjoyed any of that stuff as a talent. I got hurt. And obviously, when I went back to TNA, and once TNA became established, bro, I think the last time you saw me on TNA television was like, I don't know, 2005, and I didn't leave till 2012. So it was like the last 7 or 8 years, I could have wrote myself into that show anytime I wanted to. But, like I said, man, I became an on-air character for all the wrong reasons. I would never do it again. But I definitely did not enjoy the experience.
How hard was it going from writing WWF Attitude Era? We all know the great success it was, to WCW and a TNA. And I mean, I've heard plenty of interviews from like the likes of Eric Bischoff and Dixie Carter. And I think you're just using someone like Russo as a scapegoat. You want to blame the failure of your company on someone. The guy's he's obviously talented. You don't write great programming throughout the 90s for us all to still be talking about to this day, when no one's out here talking about what Dixie Carter did in TNA and stuff like that. How did you find the difference in writing going from a Raw and a SmackDown to WCW?
You see, here was the biggest difference. This was the biggest difference. When I was writing for listen, man, wrestling is a political battlefield. I would not recommend anybody the wrestling business sucks, bro. It sucks. It is filled with con men and carnies and liars and workers. I've worked for big companies in my life, including CBS. The politics were nowhere near what they were in professional wrestling. My whole thing was, I just want to write and produce the show. I'm not looking for promotions. I'm not looking for power. I'm not looking for corner offices. None of that shit is important to me. I just want to write the best show I possibly can. The difference was, bro, when I was in the WWE and the same politics were happening, Vince McMahon had my back. And it was clear, if you F with Vince Russo, you're effing with me. So that gave me the ability to 1000% concentrate on writing the show. I didn't have to have eyes in the back of my head because nobody effed with me. By the time I got to WCW and then later on TNA, when Hogan and Bischoff come in, bro, it's a political battlefield. And now you've got to convince this person about this, and you got to convince this one about this. Bro, I got so tired of convincing people what we had to do and what was, what it was going to take to really increase the numbers, that I just had enough of it. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life, bro, trying to convince people what needed to be done when I had already proven it to work. And it's funny, bro, for the people that call TNA a failure, bro, we were on Spike TV and we were doing 2 million viewers. AEW is on TNT, which is twice the size of Spike, and these guys can't crack 1 million viewers? And you're going to sit there and tell me TNA on Spike with their 2 million viewers that was a failure? Like, what math are you doing, bro? Like that's what makes me laugh. TNA was a failure, and not even that, bro. Look at the money Tony Khan is spending on talent. Like, can you imagine what that payroll looks like? And you guys can't go over 1 million viewers? Come on, bro. Like, give me a break, man.
Vince, I know we've got some questions from ourselves and from our listeners. I know Adam's got some that he wants to get to with you as well, my man.
Yeah, we'll start with some of the listeners because you mentioned the 3 letters called AEW. And Ryan Wells at Ryan Wells 1983 writes, do you think that they're trying to reprise a version of the Attitude Era in AEW?
Oh, please.
Oh, God, I hope not.
Oh, my, yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
If they are, bro, you need everyone there needs to be fired.
Vince, get on a ship, mate. We're flying to the moon.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I find
no.
I personally find it, for me, like, as you say, stacked roster, but again, no storyline really. Yeah. There's a couple of bits, that MJF he's getting a bit like repetitive now. Like, MJF, okay, he's going to drop a great promo, but everyone wanted him as champion. But as you said, he's been champion now how long? And the ratings have literally like this. The only time they cracked 1 million viewers consistently was with a certain former WWE wrestler called CM Punk. Which, says it all. But I just think that they've got so much talent, but just not a clue how to utilize it.
Adam, here's the thing that blows me away. You hear all the rhetoric about how growth. Bro, their first show was in October 2019, 3.5 years ago. Bro, that first show drew 1.4 million people. 3.5 years later, you've quadrupled the payroll now.
Yeah.
You've quadrupled it from what that first show was. 3.5 years later, you can't even break 1 million. Now, bro, if you look at that show, what's that new show that they just came out on HBO? We Are Us, They Are Us.
Yeah, sorry.
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us. Andy, if you go look at the ratings for The Last of Us, they've had 4 episodes. Every single episode, the ratings have increased. Every single episode. That means 2 things. Number 1, every episode is solid. You're not losing anybody. And number 2, word of mouth is growing that show 4 weeks in a row. 3.5 years, these guys have not been able to top that initial rating. And you're going to deem AEW how is that a successful television show? I don't understand. You're not even breaking 1 million viewers. You started with 1.4. It's 3.5 years later. You've quadrupled the payroll.
Yeah.
What am I missing here?
Yeah, it's Vince. What would it take? You probably get this a lot. What would it take if AEW said, Vince, we want you to come and write some TV for us?
Bro, I swear to God, they could offer me $5 million today, and I'd say, absolutely not. No, thank you. I am 1,000% content with where I am right now in my life. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, great answer. Great answer. Adam, what else do we have?
We got one more from. We'll take one more for the Twitterverse. This is John Noakes 1982. Now, this kind of relates to what's happening in WWE in a couple of weeks. I think I know your answer, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. It's: do you think that Sami Zayn deserves the world title run that he's not going to get anyway?
Listen, you see, here's another thing.
I think I know the answer to this one.
Here's another thing. Like, Adam, I swear to God, it's like, if you watched this past Monday Night Raw, they told you 2 things. Yeah. They told you 2 things. They told you Cody Rhodes is going to beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and they told you the Roman Reigns Sami Zayn match means absolutely nothing. Those were the 2 things that they told you without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. So if they are glossing over Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns, then why is the person at home going to care at all? And to the casual fan, if you're looking at this picture with Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn, literally it should take Roman Reigns about 2.5 minutes to beat this guy. So great for that niche audience. Absolutely. The casual audience, come on, bro. Like, give me a break. Come on.
I think that's what I said last week, Andy. I think I said that on the show. Yeah. Like, you kind of like, you're trying to, we're not even trying to sell it now because it's on the network, right? But you're trying to make us believe that Sami Zayn is going to win it when, as soon as Cody Rhodes won the Rumble, Reigns, and I think that was even before they took on Kevin Owens, because I think the men's Rumble actually opened the show. Yeah. So they were already saying that Cody Rhodes is going against Roman Reigns before Kevin Owens. They now had that promo on Raw, which what annoys me now is every promo that it either goes for or against Cody is always about Dusty. I get the Paul Heyman close. I get that they had the thing, they were close, they had history. But it seems like no matter who goes against Cody, there's always a reference to his dad. And it's like, look, I want Cody to be successful for Cody, not for what he's done.
And listen, man, they did that with Charlotte at the beginning, and it did not help her. I mean, it greatly hurt her until she was finally able to get out of that shadow. That took years.
Yeah. Exactly. And just going back to touch upon it, they had already announced it. They announced that he was going against Roman at WrestleMania. I know they wanted The Rock. We know kind of what was going to happen was they were going to somehow take away one of the belts and have that as night 1 for Cody and have The Rock and Roman as night 2. That was kind of what was going on, but they've given it away. So kind of what's the point? The United States title now, which is, I'm glad they're making these titles a bit more relevant and they're giving it a bit more prestige, because it was a prestigious title in WCW, before WWE bought them. But yeah, and it's like that now means more to it. So now Monday Night Raw is the US title show. And obviously,
It was the tag team titles for a bit.
Yeah.
It's now the US title. It's like, that's what I said at the start of the show. I remember turning on Raw. You knew that Rock, Austin, Mick Foley, Taker, someone, it was opening the show with what was going on relevance to the world title. And every now and again, throughout Raw, it would dip into it. There'd be a backstage segment. It would involve the champion. There'd be an interview. It would involve the champion. Now, Roman Reigns could go a whole show and not being mentioned, and then he'll pop up in SmackDown in 2 weeks, and you're like, oh yeah, and but the thing is, the fans nowadays, they just think that's the norm. They're like, oh well, we're used to these casual champions. You can't have a wrestling company with a casual champion.
Andy, like I said, I'm working for a little, indie company here in Colorado. Right after this show, I've got to write an episode for them. Right after this show, when I sit down and I'm writing the show, the very first place I start is with the champion. What is he doing on this show? How is he dispersed and woven throughout this entire show with that title? Bro, I wrote the Attitude Era 25 years ago. 25 years later, I'm doing the same exact thing. Everybody should be there because of this title and what it represents. And that's where you start.
Yeah, most definitely. Dave Paul would like to know, Vince, ask Vince what his most unpopular opinion about wrestling is.
My most unpopular opinion today.
I mean, I've got Vince. My one is, and this you're not going to agree with me here. My most unpopular opinion is you don't have to answer it. I think Ric Flair is one of the most overrated wrestlers of all time.
Wow, that's
it's unpopular, Vince. It's unpopular. I know, but what's yours, my friend?
Well, I guess my most unpopular opinion would be that wrestling sucks in 2023. I get people actually argue with me, and all I say is, bro, look at the numbers. I'm not going to have an argument with you. Look at, bro. There is a 20-year decrease in wrestling ratings. God, not 20 years, bro. We're up to like 23 years now. 23 years in a row. In a row, ratings have gone down in wrestling, and you're going to tell me it's better than it's ever been? Come on.
I think it might be better than what it is for the WWE's pockets, but and
I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Bro, business and creative are two completely different things. I'm not going to argue with you about how much money they're making. Bro, take away the Saudi deal, and all of a sudden they're not making as much money. The Saudi deal has nothing to do with how bad their television product is.
No. That Saudi deal is, I tell you, Vince, I think we said this to me and Adam on our last show. WrestleMania will be in Saudi Arabia within the next 3 to 4 years. I can guarantee you that's happening. I mean, we've had to wait ages to get money. We've got money in the bank coming over here this year. We've had nothing really since SummerSlam 92. And the Saudis all of a sudden are coming in. Just briefly, Vince, I know we haven't got much longer left here. I know you're a busy man. What does the world of wrestling look like if the WWE gets sold?
Wow, man. Bro, I've always.
I've stumped Vince Russo. I'm done. I've won.
If television executives, walked into a Monday Night Raw and experience the people that were running it and how it was being run, I guarantee you they've never experienced anything like that in their lives. I guarantee you. So if an entertainment, it really depends on if an entertainment company buys the WWE. And since they're in the entertainment business, we're going to have a redo, much like Disney did with Star Wars. You're going to see something very, very, very different. And it could be for the better or it could be for the worse. Opposed to a non-entertainment company letting it go business as usual. I'll be honest with you, man. I'd rather see an entertainment company come in and make some changes and let's see what happens. And the reason why I say that is we're looking at a 20-year decline. The way they're currently doing it and the way they've been doing it, they're losing more and more fans every year. So I would rather see some kind of a shakeup than business as usual, where this industry continues to go down.
Yeah, no,
And I'm not talking monetarily. I'm talking popularity.
Yeah, no, definitely. Adam, what anything for Vince before we wrap up here?
Before we wrap up, just one other thing. Do you have any regrets about your career in wrestling?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, well, bro, if I was perfectly honest with you, my number one regret would be I would have never gotten into the industry. and bro, I'm dead serious. If I would have known what my life was going to become because I worked in the wrestling industry, I would have never done it. But at the end of the day, Adam, listen, man, I woke just like I do today. I wake up every single day and I do the best job I possibly can.
Yeah.
Whether I own my own business, whether I was working for CBS, whether I was in wrestling, whether I'm doing podcasting today, I know I left nothing on the table. And that's really my frustration today. A lot of times when it's creative and writing, it looks like they're not even trying. And that drives me crazy because I know the effort that I put in. I know what it takes to have a successful show. And the fact that it just looks like they're going through the motions today drives me nuts. So absolutely not, because every single day on the job, no matter who I worked for, I did the best job I possibly could.
Great. And lastly, do you just want to tell the viewers what you're doing and how they can reach out and what you've got in terms of your brand?
Yeah, guys, I do podcasting, man. Several podcasts every single day. I've got a lot of people from the wrestling world who do podcasts with me. I always forget somebody, but Disco Inferno, Stevie Ray, Stevie Richards, Just Incredible, Taylor Hendricks, EC3. I have so many people that I do shows with. You can get them all, guys. Just go to russosbrand.com.
Brilliant. I just, for one, before Andy goes in, I just want to thank you and Vince for this hour. It's gone really quick. I could talk to you for a lot more. You've been open. It's been fantastic for me to speak to you. I actually just want to thank you for what you did for wrestling back then and made it more watchable for me and created heroes for me like Stone Cold and Triple H. I know sometimes it takes the character to make the hero, but it also takes the writing behind it. And I do think people don't understand that as much as they should. So thank you.
I appreciate that very much, Adam. Thank you, my man.
Yeah, Vince, I can just echo that, my man. You know what I mean? A lot is said about you in the wrestling world, in the world of sports entertainment. It's complete crap. We've just got to sit down and spend 1 hour with you. I've been a fan of yours since you gave us the Attitude Era, and you were someone who wrote TV. When I've grown up and got to know the industry and look into the industry, you are truly someone that I look up to. You know, you've inspired more people than you've let down in the world, Vince. So you've truly given myself, Adam, many wrestling fans out there so many good memories. So when I hear you, I know you speak about it on your podcast that you don't like the wrestling industry, you wouldn't have got into it. We're all grateful that you got into it because you've given us some of the greatest moments of our life, and you've given us one of the best hours that I've had doing podcasting. I've been doing this for 3 years now, Vince. So thank you so much, my brother.
I really appreciate that, Adam. Andy, I'm sorry. Kind words, man. Thank you very, very much, man.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find this episode. It's going to be on the Sports Capital network at T Sports Capital. You can find us at HTT Buckle on Twitter. Make sure you go and check us out. We'll get Vince back down the line, but this has been an incredible episode. Vince, keep doing what you're doing, my friend. Never stop, because you're one of the good guys.
Thanks a lot, man. Andy, Adam, thank you guys very much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. No worries. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Till next time, everybody, stay safe.